So Adam, how does someone get themselves locked up in an asylum for the clinically insane?
You stand in front of a mirror and you hold your eyes open and then you just run outside.
Yes, flailing and wide eyes.
And screaming.
Well, Nellie Bly is about to become one of the most celebrated stunt journalists of the 1800s. She is going to walk out into New York City and try to get herself committed.
Wow.
Because for years, rumours had circulated about the brutal conditions in the asylum. But time and time again, these were just put down to the words of mad people.
Sure.
And so Nellie is about to find out for herself firsthand, which is a huge risk, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, how is she going to get out of this?
But Adam, what Nellie is about to do is only the tip of the iceberg for what she achieves in her life. What have you achieved in your life?
I mean, today or...
Welcome to The Compendium, an assembly of fascinating things, a weekly variety podcast that gives you just enough information to stand your ground at any social gathering.
We explore stories from the darker corners of true crime, their hidden gems of history, and the jaw-dropping deeds of extraordinary people.
I'm Kyle Risi, your ringmaster for this week's episode.
And I'm Adam Cox, the in-house litigation lawyer for this week. A lot of the staff want to sue.
Yes, specifically, they want to sue, the clowns?
The animals. Yeah.
He bit me. No, I didn't.
You said that this would be a safe environment.
So what are your KPIs, Adam? To keep the litigations low?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah?
That's why we blackmailed the staff. Just to have some dirt on them so they can't sue us.
I see. So it's like we're going back to Soviet Union, Russia kind of tactics where you get all your dirt on everyone. Everyone is informing on everyone else. The lions are informing on the elephants and bearded ladies informing on...
Non-bearded ladies?
The non-bearded ladies? Yeah. That's a stick-on beard. Yeah. There's some dirt for you.
Yeah.
Guys, if you're new to the show and you want to support us, then the absolute best way to support the show and enjoy some exclusive perks is to join us over at Patreon, because signing up will get you access to next week's episode a whole 7 days early. And it's completely free.
But for as little as $5 a month, you can become a fellow freak of the show, which will unlock our entire back catalogue of our secret episodes.
You're going to have to sign up to find out what they are.
Yeah.
They're not on the main feed.
Yeah, so don't even look.
Yeah. But Adam, let's be honest, right? The real reason to sign up as a Patreon is that certified freaks and big top tier members get exclusive access to our compendium keychain. And it's free. We'll send it to you in the post. We'll pay for the tariffs. We don't care. But it is the surefire way to guarantee that me and you, Adam and Kyle, are always there, dangling near your crotch. What's wrong? Did it tickle you this week, did it?
You were very threatening.
Oh, I was going for seductive.
Oh, okay.
That's my sexy voice. Do you recognize it?
No. And lastly, guys, please follow us on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. Your support helps others find us and keeps these amazing stories coming.
Absolutely. I mean, the last week we only had, 6 new reviews? Not many. I'm mad. But anyway, Adam, that is enough of the housekeeping. Because today on The Compendium, we are diving into an assembly of adventure, ambition, and a life that keeps pivoting so hard, it accidentally changes the world.
I don't think you could have been more vague.
But it's poetic, right?
Is it?
What a beautiful tagline for this week.
What?
Sometimes it's not always about giving you the information. It's about painting a beautiful, poignant picture.
Okay, so what are you trying to paint for us?
Okay, so Adam, shut your eyes.
Okay.
Imagine you are standing in front of the mirror.
There I am.
That's me. But wait, my eyes are closed.
Yeah.
It is late at night. It is also 1887. And you, Adam, are in a workhouse for the poor in the heart of New York City.
So I probably stink a bit.
You stink anyway.
Oh.
Now, the room is shadowy. It is lit by a single flickering gaslight. You can literally hear the hissing in the background. But Adam, you are not checking your hair. You're not fixing your pretty dress. You're actually widening your eyes. You are stretching them until they start to ache. You're doing everything you can to fight that urge to blink.
What?
But Adam, the question is, Why the fuck are you doing this?
Why am I looking myself in a mirror trying to stop myself from blinking?
Adam, this isn't a game because you are trying to make yourself look insane. You're training yourself for the performance of a lifetime because the woman that you are standing...
Oh, I am a woman.
Yes.
Okay.
Staring in the mirror. The one that you've just embodied is a woman called Elizabeth Cochran. Now, you might not recognize that name because to the world, she is actually known as Nellie Bly. Have you heard of that name before?
Nellie Bly. I don't think I have.
Well, at this point, although she doesn't know it, Adam, Nellie Bly is about to become one of the most celebrated stunt journalists of the 1800s. Standing there in front of the mirror, Nellie isn't checking her smile. She is literally practicing madness because in a moment, she is going to walk out into New York City and try to get herself committed into one of the most notorious asylums for the clinically insane.
An asylum? Does she want to interview someone?
Adam, she wants to write an expose from the inside. She wants to put herself in the thick of it. Because for years, rumors had circulated about the brutal conditions from the food, the staff, the cruelty, as well as the unnecessary treatments that were being inflicted on these patients. But the problem was, most of the people saying these things were the patients themselves, right? Like once you're labeled with a diagnosis of clinically insane, it was easy to just dismiss their words. And so Nellie is about to find out for herself firsthand, which is a huge risk, right? Because remember, once you're in, you are in. Like once you've been declared clinically insane, you can't just walk out there once you're done, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how is she going to get out of this?
Exactly. But Adam, what Nellie is about to do is only the tip of the iceberg for what she achieves in her life. So today, on the Compendium, I'm going to tell you about the incredible life of this woman that the world knows as Nellie Bly, a monumental figure of the 19th century, and the lengths that she went to, not just to uncover the truth, but to prove that anything a man can do, she could do way better. I'm going to tell you about how she broke out of the mold that was set for women during this period, how she transformed journalism, and some of the incredible adventures that she embarked on in what is actually a very short life. It is just incredible just how much she managed to fit in.
How old was she then when she died?
We'll get onto that later on.
Is this going to make me feel sad about myself because I haven't achieved enough?
Exactly. In fact, that's how I end the episode. Adam, what have you done? What have you achieved in your life?
I mean, today or...
And I really love doing episodes like this about really great women of history. And I think it's because of the defiance and the tenacity that often comes with women of the early kind of centuries doing great things. Because with men, the patriarchy is always on their side. They have very few barriers in their way. So when men achieve great things, it's because often the path is left clear for them in the first place, right? But when a woman does it, it kind of hits really differently because so often they're not just fighting the challenge that's in front of them, they're also fighting the rules that have been laid out for them. And it makes me think, if those barriers weren't there in the first place, what else could some of these great women have achieved in history? So yeah, you know nothing about Nellie Bly.
Nothing.
Let's start at the beginning, shall we? So Nellie Bly is actually born Elizabeth Jane Cochran in Pennsylvania in 1864. Now, growing up, her family called her Pinky because of the very elaborate pink outfits that her mother would usually dress her in. But Adam, don't let this fool you into thinking that Elizabeth is a very specific type of girl, because she's not. Growing up, her family lived in a little hamlet called Cochran Mills, just outside Pittsburgh. Now, it's not a coincidence that she shares her surname with the town because the hamlet is actually named after her family. Because long before she was born, her father had established a mill in the area, and eventually an entire hamlet ended up being built around it. So that kind of tells you a little bit something about kind of the family status in the community.
Okay, kind of a big deal.
She's a big deal, yeah. But Adam, turning point. When Elizabeth is just 6 years old, her father dies unexpectedly, and as a result, he doesn't actually leave a will. It's a big rookie mistake, but again, it was quite unexpected. That means, by law, the estate is required to be divided equally between Elizabeth and all of her siblings.
And how many siblings has she got?
Exactly. The problem is she's got 15 of them.
Oh my word. He was busy.
He was. He had 10 kids with one woman and then ended up having 5 with the second.
Right.
Elizabeth is the second marriage, so she's got like 4 other siblings. And so once everything is split up, it isn't exactly life-changing money. And for a young woman of the age, it also meant that her prospects of finding a husband aren't really that good as they could have been had her father been more prepared.
What would the father have done differently? If it was split up across all 15 equally, would she have got more? Had there been a will?
I think what he would have done is he would have ensured maybe the farm wasn't split up and gone to the boys because they can then generate income from that. Mm-hmm. Any savings or any money that they had would have been put aside for Elizabeth as a dowry or as a prospect for a future husband. So it wasn't well planned out. There was no strategy. Mm-hmm. And because of this, Elizabeth's mother is forced to remarry. Sadly, she doesn't marry very well because she ends up marrying a very abusive drunk. And so between the ages of 9 and 14, for Elizabeth and the whole household, it is defined by extreme instability and fear. Mm-hmm. But in a strange kind of way, it's this situation that becomes a kind of a lesson for her that nobody was actually going to come and rescue her, and that if she wanted a different outcome in her life, then she was going to have to rely entirely on herself. But living in rural Pennsylvania, especially in the late 1800s, there aren't really many options for a young woman to take destiny into their own hands. Like I said, the best she could have hoped for was marrying a rich man, but without the financial prospect, it's unlikely that she would marry very well. But there are other routes available to Elizabeth and increasingly more and more women at the time. And that was to become basically a working girl. But at the time, the system is set up specifically to benefit men. And while there were a few workplace rights legislators for workers, it was mostly a grey area when it came to women who very, very often would find themselves in a situation where they were being exploited because of the lack of legislation. Mm-hmm. But there are a few respectable professions available to women, particularly in education. And so Elizabeth decides that she might try her hand at teaching. So at 15, she uses some of her inheritance and she enrolls in boarding school. But Adam, she massively underestimates how long that money's going to last because she has to drop out after a single term.
Oh, so that hasn't lasted that long at all?
No, so she gets one semester at the school, basically.
Surely you'd look at your finances and go, How much is this going to cost?
Yeah, I have no idea why she didn't plan on the money lasting longer. I don't get it. But anyway, Adam, she is deflated. To make matters worse, her mother's new marriage fails, and now the family is in an even worse position than they were before. So while she's working out what to do next, fate reaches out an opportunity, Adam. And actually, it starts with a complaint.
She complains about something or someone complains about her?
So one day she's leafing through the Pittsburgh Dispatch when she stumbles across a column written by a journalist called Erasmus Wilson. Great name. He's basically writing under the pseudonym of The Quiet Observer, which is quite a common thing for people to do back then. And it's an article called What Are Girls Good For?
Wow, that must have opened up a can of worms.
Exactly. It's basically the same old argument that was going around at the time that a woman's proper place is, guess,
in the home, raising children.
Exactly, doing domestic work, sewing, cooking, raising the children. He gets onto his soapbox about the supposedly concerning rise in the number of women that are stepping out to work during this period of time.
How dare they have a job?
In his words, he calls it a monstrosity.
I can't imagine Elizabeth's going to be the only person that writes in about this.
It lands exactly as you would expect it does. The paper is inundated with tons of angry replies, mostly from women. In fact, you could probably safe to say probably all from women, saying things like, given the economy, we don't exactly have much of a choice, right?
Yeah.
But also, fuck you.
Yeah.
Or whatever the American Victorian equivalent was back then. Did they say fuck you back then?
Probably not. More like...
Piddlesticks.
Piddles.
Damn you.
Think they can be a little more aggressive than that?
I feel like son of a bitch would have been a thing.
Art thou son of a bitch?
That's how you say it in the days of yore. Anyway, Elizabeth is one of those replies. And of course, she is furious, Adam. She basically echoes a lot of what the other letters are saying, that women who step out to work often do so out of necessity, especially when their social rights are very limited. And obviously their prospects are even worse, right? Like if you do not have a decent dowry and the pickings are slim out there because every motherfucker is a drunk, if that's the case, then the only option you have is to go out and work, right?
Yeah.
But she also pushes further, right? She's saying even if it wasn't a necessity, so what? Like if a woman wants to work, she should be allowed to work. And so in her letter, she calls for legislation that specifically protects women in the workplace and even goes as far as suggesting that jobs be created for women specifically instead of society treating them like pariahs for even daring to exist outside of the home, right? So it's a really impassioned letter. And she signs it, a lonely orphan girl. She doesn't use her own name. And also, she isn't actually an orphan. Her mother is very much still alive. So it's kind of like the 1800s equivalent of like MSN kind of email addresses, like hottie with a botty 69 at hotmail.com.
That's the equivalent. I feel like she's trying to, I don't know, gain some kind of sympathy a little bit there.
You've nailed it on the head. This is one of the things that she really pioneers, right? She brings a personality into the way that she writes. That is really key. In a time when that just wasn't a thing, everything is very clinical, very factual, really boring.
There's an emotion behind this.
Yeah, like there is a figure there. In just a few words, lonely orphan girl, you can surmise a pretty clear picture about the author, even if it's a lie.
That's okay.
She's clearly a hottie with a body 69.
She's got a point.
So out of all the complaints that the Pittsburgh Dispatch gets, hers stands out the most. And it's not even because it's very polished. It's actually the opposite. She doesn't use any paragraphs. She very rarely uses any punctuation. But Adam, the point is that it is raw. The editors describe it as kind of having spine and personality, especially in the way that she frames herself as that central character. So the editor of the Pittsburgh Dispatch, he's a guy called George Madden. He is determined to find out who this lonely orphan girl is. And so they decide to publish a letter and a call for the writer to come to their offices. And a few days later, that's exactly what she does. To George Madden's delight, what she writes translates face to face. And right there in the office, he offers her a job to write a few sample articles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this is the thing. Elizabeth is often dubbed as this pioneer in this very male-orientated space, which is often misrepresented as meaning she was one of the first female journalists. But that's not quite accurate because by the late 1800s, women were quite active in journalism. But the key difference was that they were expected to kind of stay in a very specific lane.
So they had to write about certain topics, not about, I don't know, challenging the status quo. I imagine it's more about, this is obviously stereotypical, house stuff or whatever.
Exactly, yes. Writing articles, or as they call them, dispatches for other women, basically. Usually society pages, gossip, etiquette, domestic advice. Do you know what I mean? And of course, this is a direct symptom of misogyny, still deeply rooted in the separation of roles defined by the patriarchy. There is this belief that women wouldn't be able to handle the pressure of serious stories like crimes or politics because either they wouldn't be able to understand the nuance or be able to cope with the gnarly details when it came to kind of the gruesome crimes. And they also felt like if they went out into the streets, if they were interviewing anyone, people wouldn't want to tell them, like, oh yeah, they got slit from ear to ear because they want to protect their feelings.
Or the women would gasp and faint. Or
yeah,
whatever.
like, smelling salts. Yes.
That is crazy. I get that in today's world. There's still elements of that, right?
Yeah, there's still a glimmer of that around everywhere you look.
Yeah, exactly. But that's crazy to think just that they were treated like that.
Yes, and Adam, remember, this is quite a monumental period in history, right? We're just about to embark on the suffragette movement. Women since the 1850s have been working in journalism, so there have been big strides, right? But there was still a lot of attitudes to dismantle at this period of time. And very often, when women did tackle these big stories, the papers would get a hell of a lot of complaints sent in because men just can't handle it when a woman is, as they say, stepping out of their sphere, talking about things that men suspect they don't necessarily understand.
Yeah, what do they know about these things? I'm not going to listen to them.
Exactly. So when it comes to Elizabeth as a pioneer in the world of journalism, is largely down to her refusal to stay in that lane, basically. And what is even more maddening to the men is that when she does break out of this sphere, it's often done in a way that surpasses the other male kind of journalists at the time. She's very good at it.
Because her news articles are signed off, I guess, by Elizabeth, if she was to put a male name on there, right, they would probably not think twice.
Yeah. And what you tend to find is that it's this weird mix. A lot of articles don't get signed off at all. They are completely anonymous, men, female, whatever. And there'll be some men that will sign their names to it, the more credible ones. But also, when it comes to women, they will normally write under a pen name. And we'll get onto that in just a second. I'll explain why. But Elizabeth is now got a job at the Pittsburgh Dispatch, and she is asked to write a few test articles for George where he asks her to expand on her initial complaint letter, which she titles The Girl Puzzle, where she argues for women's work rights, basically, in the workplace. George is super impressed by this, and so he pays her for it. But then, just to be sure, he wants her to do another dispatch, this time on divorce reform. And she titles it Mad Marriages, where again, as I said, she calls for divorce reforms, drawing on her mother's kind of failed marriage, which, Adam, is key. This is what she's pioneering, right? She's changing up how these stories are told in journalism. Rather than being factual or clinical, she's drawing upon personal experience. And once again, George is super impressed. And so he hires her on the spot as a full-time journalist for $5 a week.
Good for her. I don't know if that's a good wage, but it's good that she has this job.
I don't know if it's a good wage. Probably not.
I would assume that men are probably going to get paid more than her.
For sure. But before she can start writing, She needs a pen name, which actually, Adam, is a way for progressive news agencies like the Pittsburgh Dispatch to kind of navigate the rampant sexism and the potential backlash against these women journalists, especially when they're operating kind of outside their sphere, because she's going to be doing that quite a bit. And so a lot of people think that Elizabeth chose her own pen name, but actually it's George who picks it. He actually does a quick whip around the office for ideas, and someone suggests the name Nellie Bly from a popular song at the time. It's like a country folk Pittsburghy kind of rural song. And basically with no better options, that becomes her byline.
No better options?
Yeah.
Not that it's a terrible name, but I'm just, what else was decided upon?
Yeah, some put like a parking receipt in there. This is an expense.
Some gum.
The only thing is they misspell the name, right? The original song spells it with a Y, but when they publish it, it's with an IE. And by that point, it's too late because they've already run her first article. So she's basically Nellie Bly with an IE. And in the same vein, in her early articles, they carry the same theme as her first letter, the realities of being a modern working girl, especially among factory workers. And she goes off and she starts writing exposés about the long hours, the extremely low pay, the lack of rights and protections. Again, her writing isn't very elegant, Adam, but it is relatable and it's raw. Particularly, she's really good at getting down to eye level with the people she's writing about. Rather than treating them like statistics or faceless kind of workforce people, she captures them as people, writing about what they get up to outside of work, what they dream about, their friendships, and of course, their romances. It is difficult for us to appreciate the stark difference in the writing that she's starting to introduce because it is so commonplace for us today. Someone actually describes it as, instead of like painting in 2D, she's actually like building a scene with texture and light. And it's something that really stands out to the readers that are reading her work at the time. Mm-hmm. However, factory owners, on the other hand, when they read these articles, they do not like it. And it's because the dispatchers are starting to threaten their reputations and honestly shine a light on their exploitation, especially towards these women. So the Pittsburgh Dispatch start getting inundated with complaints, again, justifying why a lot of these women wrote under these pseudonyms because it kind of protects them, right? And typically, a few complaints were not really anything to worry about. But these complaints were coming from the very people the Dispatch relied on for advertising revenue. And so to be safe, George moves her to the society sections and suggests that she starts writing about gardening.
Really? So essentially their ad revenue is going to drop. I guess these business owners are threatened, we're not going to put money into your newspaper, we'll put it somewhere else.
And like, it's such a shame because you can see that the Pittsburgh Dispatch are trying to be progressive. George is quite a progressive guy. He wants to give these women an opportunity. But the thing is, though, when it comes to your bottom line, that trumps any kind of societal progression. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, as much as he wants to do good, he's got a business to run.
Exactly.
Which is not fair, but yeah.
It's not. And we see that quite a lot today, especially with a lot of businesses kind of wanting to get involved in the pride movements around about June every year. But there have been a few instances where there's been a lot of backlash. Good examples are what happened with Gillette, right? They kind of created their whole big campaign where they were trying to hold men accountable for their behavior towards women. There was also the Bud Light campaign where they had that trans person who was kind of advertising the beer, but it caused such a massive backlash that they instantly rewound a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Kind of reverted back to what was safe grounds for them.
Exactly. And it's because it ends up threatening their bottom line, right?
Yeah, they've got to answer to the shareholders, right?
Of course, Nellie is outraged. She doesn't want to be writing about gardening, but she decides that if she is going to be shoved into the society pages, fine, that is okay, but she's going to do it on her own terms. And so she pitches an idea to George Madden to let her write about travel, and he agrees. But then Nellie goes, great, one problem. I'm not going to be doing it from my desk. If I'm writing about a place, I want to actually be in it, which is a fair sentiment.
That is smart because essentially what she's negotiating is a bunch of jollies.
What do you mean by jollies?
You go on a jolly, a nice little trip away, and then, I'll send you an article.
And it's worth not taking that for granted either. Like, traveling to a new country as a young working class woman in the 1800s is a massive deal. And so at 21 years old, she heads to Mexico for 6 months as a foreign correspondent.
Yeah, when you put it like that, I can't imagine traveling back then was difficult anyway. So to be given that opportunity for them to say, yeah, that makes sense. You need to go live these experiences. She's done well for herself.
She has, yes. And so she goes to Mexico, where over the course of 6 months, she files 26 dispatches on Mexican culture, the food, what she sees. They're hugely popular. People are genuinely fascinated by what she sees. It gives them a sort of window into a world that most people just would never see.
Yeah.
But while she is there, Nellie, as she always does, starts digging into the darker side of Mexico too, and she begins reporting on the rampant poverty across the country. She also becomes increasingly critical of the government, specifically the dictator at the time. He gets wind of some of the articles that she's writing, and he sends the authorities to basically threaten her with arrest. And as a result, she is forced to flee the country. So she's had a good run, 6 months, right, in Mexico. She's now back in Pittsburgh, and she's put back on the society pages.
So she's not going to get another trip away?
No. And so one day, she just leaves a note on her desk and says, I'm off to New York. Look out for me.
And is she going to report back, or is she just, no, I'm going to New York?
No, she's just leaving. Yeah, no, she's not going to be a travel correspondent in New York. No, she just quits. She packs up her stuff, she bundles her old mum into a train, and they make a beeline for the city.
She bundles her mum into a train?
Yeah.
It feels like she's in some kind of luggage.
Pretty much. And she is assuming that she's just going to walk into a newspaper office in New York and just get a job.
I mean, there's probably more opportunity there, right, for someone like her?
Yes, but it doesn't work that way in New York, right? In New York, newspaper districts, they're like a fortress. There's guards, receptionists, secretaries blocking anyone from even coming close to an editor. It's literally like a gauntlet. So she comes up with a plan, which is very smart in my opinion. She decides that she is going to pretend to write an article about how hard it is for women to get started in journalism in the city. So under that pretense, she secures a ton of interviews with various editors. And Adam, it works like a charm because she's playing into the thing that they love the most.
What, themselves?
Themselves, their ego. They're like, oh, you want to write an article about me? Sure, come on in.
But where is she saying that she's writing for? Or does that really matter? She just calls them up and says, I'm doing an article, I want to speak to you.
So if you didn't catch that little detail earlier on, when she wrote that first article for George, remember, he liked it. What did he do? He bought it.
Okay.
So she's like a freelance journalist.
I see.
And when she's in their offices, she basically quizzes them about what they're looking for in a journalist. This basically gives her a playbook on how to get around all the different obstacles that she's coming up against.
That is so smart.
But also, Adam, she's really charming, she's personable, so along the way, she ends up filling up her Rolodex with a bunch of connections that's all going to come in very handy later on. Eventually, those connections get her into the offices of the New York World. At the time, they are like the biggest newspaper in the city, and it's owned by Joseph Pulitzer, as in the Pulitzer Prize.
Okay.
So he is a big deal. She pulls together everything she has learned from the previous editors she's interviewed, and she goes on the charm offensive. And by the end of that interview, they offer her a job.
Well done, her.
Yeah. So she's smart. The way that she's managed to navigate the city and get an opportunity, in my opinion, is very clever.
Yeah, and she's built a load of contacts that she's now going to be able to use in her job, I suspect.
Exactly. So her first assignment was to go undercover in a mental asylum and report on the conditions that she finds inside. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, there were loads of rumors at the time circulating about the horrific conditions being experienced by patients. But time and time again, these were just put down to the words of mad people, literally on account of the fact that they were clinically insane. Here's the thing though, they were just rumors because every time authorities went to investigate, most of the time when they arrive, everything is just tickety-boo. So the world wanted someone to go in covertly, unannounced, either to put the rumors to rest or to blow this story wide open. Mm-hmm. Nellie doesn't even blink. She says yes immediately. After all, she's desperate for work at this point, right? So the question is, Adam, how does someone get themselves locked up in an asylum for the clinically insane? And by the way, sorry, before you answer that question, I'm only using the language that was used throughout Nellie's writing.
Okay. Of yesteryear.
Of yesteryear, the days of yore. So Adam, I'll ask it again. How does someone get themselves locked up in an asylum for the clinically insane?
You stand in front of a mirror and you hold your eyes open and then you just run outside.
Yes.
That's that's what she came up with?
She flailed a little.
Okay.
Flailing and wide eyes.
And screaming.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the thing, right? We have this preconceived idea of what it means to be someone who is insane. Mm-hmm. But that's not actually the truth, right? Because you don't want to go overboard with it. The first thing to know is that Nellie is completely on her own. There's no secret back door. There's no insider willing to help validate a diagnosis or even to help get her out.
So is anyone at the company she's working for helping her or coaching her?
I just said no. I just said no.
But I thought no, fair enough. Someone's not helping her to get in and diagnose, but is anyone coaching her? This is what you need to do.
She is on her own. Just if you want this job, go make this happen.
Wow.
It's crazy. So the only way she's literally going to get into this asylum is by genuinely getting herself committed. So that night, she goes home. She starts practicing in the mirror on how to look insane. Like I said, she has this preconceived idea of what a mad person would be like. But that in itself, she realizes is far too over the top, right? She has to find that balance where it wouldn't look like she was acting, but also not be so subtle that people would just have like pity on her.
Yeah. So is she going to cause some kind of scene then? They're going to call the police or something?
Yeah. But again, she can't be too hysterical.
That's weird. It's interesting that she's rationalizing it, going, no, that's too much. Bring it down a notch.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. She's Coco Chanel. Before you leave the house, take one thing off. When you're about to go to the asylum, before you go in, just take a little bit of crazy out. That sort of thing, you know?
Right, okay.
So she realizes actually that it's all about the vacant stare. It's not so much looking at people, but it's about kind of looking through them in a way. Like I'm looking behind you. It's literally in the focus of your eyes. She also reads a bunch of ghost stories so that she can bring that glimmer of terror to the foreground whenever she's in character. To hide her identity, she decides to put on a slight Cuban accent. She also stops brushing her teeth. She stops washing her face. So she's got this greasy, disheveled look about her. She changes her name as well from Nellie Bly to Nellie Brown.
Okay.
So not a huge change, but logistically, it's her best option since all of her luggage is already monogrammed with NB.
Right, okay.
So it's easier than buying a load of new stuff, basically. And then she channels her character arc. She was going to play a struggling New York working girl who was starting to unravel by the stresses of surviving in the big city. And this character arc is deliberately playing into the biases of the men who will eventually diagnose her. They're already predisposed to assume that these types of women, confused and poor, needed locking up for their own good. So she's becoming exactly the patient they're expecting to see in a way.
And does she know the type of patients they already have in order to pull on or play this narrative?
I think mostly she has spent a lot of time with these working girls. Mm-hmm. She knows how easily they unravel. She also understands society, especially during this period of time, and what they do to these women. There are no kind of like welfare homes. There are like boarding houses where you can go, but they're mostly for working women who haven't fallen down that pit of insanity just yet, right? But as soon as you fall over that cliff, where do you put them? You can put them on the streets, but you can also just dump them in the asylum, which around about this time was very common to do. Like when someone was an inconvenience or they just weren't wanted, it was off to the asylum for them.
Yeah, rather than help them.
Yeah, it is a sad state of affairs. So next, Nellie kisses her old mum goodbye. She checks herself into a temporary home for women at 84 2nd Avenue. It's a charity dorm, basically, for women who are down on their luck. She pays 30 cents a night, and once she's in, she doesn't waste any time. She ends up sharing a room with like 8 other women. When everyone is getting ready to go to bed, she refuses. She just sits on the edge of a mattress, staring into the void. She starts talking obsessively about a missing suitcase, and the other women are like, babe, it's literally right there. And she's like, oh yeah. And then she will magically go back to staring off into the void. And then a few minutes later, she'll bring up the suitcase again. And they're like, for fuck's sake. Understandably, these women are terrified by this point. When they ask if she's all right, she'll turn the tables on them and pretend that she's fine and start insisting that they're the crazy ones.
Yeah, look after yourself.
Yeah. The general feeling in the house on this first night is that this bitch is going to kill us in the middle of the night.
This is just acting. This is like living that person, right?
Yeah. She's a method journalist. She's a stunt journalist, Adam. That's what this means. The lengths that someone will go to get a scoop.
Yeah, not like she hasn't got a 9 to 5 where she can just go home and take off her heels or whatever.
No, she has to live it.
How long does she have to do this for?
And when she needs a break, she'll just nip to the toilet. She'll be like, ugh.
Checks her phone.
Be like, Nellie, are you there? She's like, there's cats in here! Help! That sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. She's playing the long game to keep this up.
Yes. Nellie says, though, that one of the women in particular, a woman called Mrs. Kane, is the only one who doesn't really squirm away from her. While the others are freaking out, threatening to call the cops, she sits with her. She brushes her hair. She reassures her it's all going to be okay. Nellie writes how one of the hardest parts of all of this was torturing the people who showed a genuine compassion in all of this.
Yeah, because she's duping them, essentially.
She is, yeah. Anyway, the next morning, the police arrive.
Oh, so it didn't take long.
No. And Nellie is taken to the Essex Market Police Court where she's brought before a judge. Unexpectedly, though, the judge is really sympathetic towards her. He doesn't see a mad woman. In fact, he sees the tragedy and he even compares her to his dead sister, saying like he was positive that she was someone's darling. And so it isn't going to plan. The last thing he is thinking about is sending her to an asylum or to be assessed. His first line of thinking is, let's find her family.
I mean, that is the right thing to do, actually.
Exactly. That is a nice thing to do. But then, while he is like discussing it with the police and the other officials in the room, a reporter walks into the room. Nellie freaks out because if they recognize her, she risks blowing her cover. So what she does, and it's the thing that saves this whole thing, she pulls her shawl over her head to cover her face, and then she starts acting like erratically, like she's saying, I'm afraid of reporters, get away from me, and she starts freaking out. And by a stroke of luck, this is enough for that judge to be like, take her to be examined.
It's like, oh wait, this is going to delay me going home today, so let me...
Yeah. I know she's someone's darling, but I've got sausage and mash tonight.
Yeah.
So she thinks she saved it.
And that is good. Yeah, wow. I would love to have witnessed this, just been a fly on a wall of all these things that she was doing.
Yes. But the thing is, has she saved it? Because as reporters do, they sense the story in this mad woman that was sitting in this courtroom.
Oh, so she's going to be reported on herself.
Yes, so she goes and she speaks to the arresting officers. They interview the judge. They follow up with what happens next at the hospital. And by the end of that day, they have written an entire dispatch about this Cuban mad woman who has just been committed to the asylum. And it's an important part of the story that's going to really help to elevate her as a persona later on.
Wow, so yeah, she's got her own story. I guess she didn't expect to be covered herself.
Exactly, but it's so risky because it could have blown her cover, right?
Yeah.
So Nellie is taken to Bellevue Hospital, where she is examined by a team of doctors, experts who surely would be able to see through her act, right?
I bet there's a bunch of men that are going to go like, oh yeah, she's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. The problem is they're already leaning into their biases even before she's arrived because of what they've been told about her, right? She's been brought there as a crazy woman. They're told, obviously, that she's been exhibiting symptoms of amnesia, she's twitching, etc. So that's already formulated part of their decision. So every observation from here on out just reinforces this belief that she is mad. So they take her pulse, they look at her tongue, they do a basic eye test where they shine a light in her eye. Nellie stares into it unblinking. And in the end, they conclude that, yes, her pupils are slightly dilated, which was proof of insanity. But
Right.
to that, it turns out that Nellie is actually short-sighted, which apparently can have the same effects on your pupils. She talks about how little, Adam, she has to do to show them that she was insane. In fact, in moments where she spoke sanely, answering their questions, the more they took this as proof of her insanity. So in the end, all the doctors agree, in their words, she was positively demented. And so she is committed to Blackwell Island Asylum for the clinically insane. Now, today, Blackwell Island is known as Roosevelt Island, so it's in the middle of the river between Manhattan and Queens. It kind of goes under one of the bridges. I think maybe Williamsburg Bridge. I'm not quite sure, but it goes over it.
Oh, so it's not actually connected to mainland.
No, it's literally in the middle, and it's a long sausage shape, kind of little island, and the very north tip is where Blackwell Asylum was.
I see.
It's like Alcatraz, basically. There's no easy escape, which I guess makes it even more terrifying. Once she arrives, she doesn't waste any time getting to work. Initially, she feels a lot of pressure to come across as mad, but very quickly, Adam, she realizes that dropping the act completely goes unnoticed. So she's literally there with her notebook, taking notes, and people are just going, she's nuts.
Look at her take notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's this dropping of her act, which does terrify her about how she's going to convince them that she wasn't insane when it comes time to going home. Going up to the receptionist and going, oh, by the way, I'm not actually insane. I'm actually a journalist and I'd like to go home. And they'll be like, of course you are, darling. Come on, take your meds. And then I take her away.
Yeah, like, had she thought of her exit plan from this?
Well, the thing is, though, the official plan is that after 10 days, someone from the New York World will send in a lawyer posing as a representative of friends who will take responsibility for her care. But honestly, Adam, they can't guarantee that will even work, right? The asylum might not agree to release her. Remember, she's being diagnosed by doctors.
Yeah, but did they really diagnose her?
But they have, and it is official. That diagnosis doesn't vanish after 10 days, no matter how she ends up behaving. Or if someone comes along and goes, we'll take care of her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but it's a risk, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, that's a bridge she decides to cross in 10 days' time. For now, her job was to get to work reporting on the conditions inside this asylum. Almost immediately, Nellie sees that all the rumors are true. The asylum is built to hold 1,000 patients, but at the time, the place had been crammed with more than 1,600 patients. Due to budget cuts, they were also operating severely understaffed as well. And I read that they just had like 16 doctors on staff, which when you do the maths, that is roughly one doctor for every 100 patients that they had.
That is far too many, surely.
Yeah, it's not care, it's containment, right?
Yeah.
She talks at length about, obviously, the food. First off, just how rancid everything was. She finds a spider that's baked into some of the bread that she's been given.
Ew.
She also says it is so stale, you have to suck it like a rusk. She's given beef so old, she says it's basically leather. And then to wash it all down, they're given this pinkish water that they were calling tea. And she said that wasn't tea.
They just don't care about the hygiene or the welfare of these.
Oh yeah, no, it is rancid in there. She says bath time is horrific. They don't have any heating, so obviously the baths are cold. Remember, this is October. Staffing shortages meant that everyone was washed together, so everyone's standing around naked, like getting ready to be washed. The more able patients are forced to scrub the less capable ones. She says that for the challenging patients, where undressing them was just impossible, they were just bathed in their nightgowns and then forced to sleep in ice-cold cells, dripping wet. She says that they don't change the water between baths either, which is something that we saw when we did the Jack the Ripper episode, where there'd be like 11 baths before the water would be changed. So rank. Then everyone was dried with the same wet towel that would just been used on patients with like really rancid open sores all over their bodies.
How is she not like flinching? I know she's obviously got to like, fit in, right?
Yeah.
She must be thinking, I don't want to play along.
No, I wouldn't want to. She talks about how everyone who complained or resisted were either beaten by the attendants and nurses, sometimes even threatened with sexual violence. She talks about how during the day, there's just literally nothing to do. Like patients are forced to sit on these benches. There was no speaking allowed. You weren't even allowed to move. You just had to sit there doing nothing, just staring into the void, often for stretches as long as 12 hours.
I mean, that's not going to help anyone,
No.
whether you're sane or not.
No, they couldn't even go to the toilet. They were just expected to just go right there and then. And then at the end of the day, staff would just hose everything down. So it would just probably stank. She says that the most dangerous patients, or the ones that misbehaved the most, were systematically tied together in one place. So they just spent all day together. The most dangerous patients, the ones that could bite you on your neck.
But keep them together.
Yeah.
And they can fight it out. Did she, I mean, you might come on to it, but like she obviously was speaking to some of the other inmates, I guess you could say, or patients rather, but it feels more like a prison. Did she kind of like recognize that some of them were like her and not really, certainly not clinically insane?
Oh, yeah, for sure. One of the things that brings her articles or this dispatch to life is the people that she ends up connecting with, and the people she feels awful about the fact that she gets to leave after 10 days and leaving these people that she cares about left inside. Like many of the people in the asylum are not crazy.
Yeah.
They are just poor, and the city didn't know what to do with them. So this became the dumping ground. But having to exist in those conditions for some ultimately is what drives them mad. Can you imagine sitting on a pew for 12 hours a day doing nothing? That will drive you crazy. It honestly sounds like it's the lunatics that are running the asylum.
They don't know how to treat these people.
It is horrific. Nellie's entire account is really interesting to read. It's called 10 Days in a Madhouse. And I'll explain to you how it's received and how it's published in just a second, but I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. Surprisingly, for something that's written in the 1800s, it's quite easy to read. But it is horrific, some of the things that she goes through. But after 10 days, as promised, the New York World do send in their lawyer, and they do manage to get her released. So it's a bit of a relief. When she is out, she immediately writes up her entire expose. Like I said, it's titled 10 Days in a Madhouse. It is published very cleverly in 2 parts, a week apart. The first part runs in the Sunday edition on the 9th of October, 1887. It recounts her preparation and her diagnosis and ends with her boarding the boat to the asylum, leaving all the readers on like a cliffhanger.
She knows how to tell a good story.
Yes, she does. So everyone is desperate to know exactly what happens next. And so over that week, the only thing that people can talk about is this story, including the rival newspaper that printed the original story about Nellie Brown being committed in the first place. They basically just realized that they've been duped as part of another paper scoop, and now they just end up looking ridiculous.
Really? That's funny.
And so they scramble to counter Nellie's expose, calling into question the New York World's ethics about the lengths that they're willing to go to just to land a story. And for the public, as you can imagine, they've got their popcorn out or their pork scratchings, and they're watching all of this unfold, this kind of like back and forth in this debate that is all revolving around this incredible story.
Isn't that funny that they're criticizing them for the ethics that they'd go to, but not actually criticizing the ethics of the institution that they're reporting on?
Sure, that's true. And so this entire story ends up taking on a life on its own. Yes, it's the asylum expose, but underneath that is also a story about Nellie as a journalist herself, right? Someone who's already very investable, but also her commitment to the craft and the ethical question hanging in the air. Like, should she have done it this way? And I say, absolutely. I don't think it's an ethical question at all.
She went undercover, and that's what she did. She exposed it to hopefully get change. People to start questioning how they're doing things.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, they did send in auditors and they found nothing. And it's because the asylum was pretty much covering their tracks. So this was the only option available. When the second installment comes out, the revelations are, of course, horrifying. It confirms all the rumors, but also that they were way worse than people even imagined in the first place. The scale and the reach of the story forces the city to act. Nellie ends up going before a grand jury to tell them everything. They're shocked, and so they send a team in for a surprise visit to see the conditions for themselves. But of course, there is a twist because the asylum has been tipped off, probably from the article itself, so they knew this was coming. And so when auditors arrive, everything has been scrubbed. Patients are suddenly wearing better clothes. Food is suddenly more appetizing. And that's because actually one of the things that Nellie points out in her article is such a weird thing to kind of pull upon, is the lack of seasoning in the cooking.
What, now there's like salt and pepper everywhere?
Yes. The asylum and like pulls in the auditors into the kitchen. They're like, look how much salt we've got. There's literally piles and piles of it. Like, I don't know what she's talking about. Of course, any patients that could corroborate Nellie's story are either hidden away or transferred to other wards. But Adam, in spite of their efforts to try and cover this up, and probably as a testament to Nellie's credibility, the grand jury, they believe every single word she says. They say that her account was far too detailed and far too consistent for it to not be true.
Yeah.
As a result, the city, they inject the equivalent of $800,000 to improve the conditions of the asylum. They also implement thorough examinations to ensure that only the seriously ill are ever committed, meaning that it can't be used as like a dumping ground for the inconvenient members of society any longer.
Good.
Of course, they get rid of the most abusive physicians and nurses that Nellie had identified in her testimony. And so, because of her, a lot of really bad people end up losing their jobs, and a lot of great improvements happen across the asylum. And out of all of this, Nellie cements herself as this great stunt reporter. Today, we call them investigative reporters because over time, the word stunt has kind of taken on this negative connotation of reporters doing these things as performances or spectacles, etc. Mm-hmm. So this is also where we start to see a shift in the way journalists report on stories. Nellie proved that it's okay to connect with the subject matter, to let your own voice come through. And it's an easy sell because it reflected directly on the bottom line for a lot of these newspapers. Like the public was seeking out the newspapers where these journalists were writing like Nellie was writing.
I was going to say, did this create more jobs, or these other newspapers now are like trying to find other Nellies for them to report?
Exactly. There is now 1 million Nellies across the city. Every newspaper wants their own Nellie, basically. Yeah. But you also see a lot more journalists starting to put their own name to their work rather than just writing anonymously. But it has this also really interesting effect because once your name is attached to an article, the quality of that journalism skyrockets because it's now your reputation that has been measured against it. Do you understand what I mean? So it's quite a transformative time for journalism. And it all comes down to Nellie. So Nellie goes off to do a bunch more kind of exposés. One of them she titles Trying to Be a Servant, where she goes in undercover looking for a job in domestic work through different employment agencies. And she ends up exposing a bunch of different scams designed to kind of fleece the poor. Like they will charge you $1 upfront just to be on their books, which for many people at the time is the equivalent of a week's worth of food. So it's really exploitative. Then, of course, if you were lucky enough to be shortlisted and then presented for interview with a client, you, of course, needed a reference. And time again, they would say that your references were not up to scratch, even if you did have one. And then they would say for a fee, we would give you a reference, and then someone who doesn't even know them would then vouch for their character, their skills, or whatever. And so they're not just fleecing these poor women, they're also fleecing the clients as well by like lying to them about this cleaner's capabilities when really there might even be like a killer.
Yeah.
She does another piece titled White Slave,
Okay.
where she exposes the brutal conditions of factory labor and how they exploited their workers. In particular, she focuses on this box making factory where she gets a job, and you basically get employed on a 2-week trial basis without any pay. It's your opportunity to prove yourself, right? To prove how good you are. But the problem is there's hundreds of them. So you all believe that you are competing for just a handful of jobs. So desperate to impress, you can imagine that the productivity of those trial workers is just through the roof, which is exactly what the factory owners want. At the end of the 2 weeks, though, they tell you that you didn't make it, and so you are sacked, and then they just bring in the next batch.
I was going to say, it's just a conveyor belt of like free work, right?
Yeah, a revolving door that exploits kind of people's desperation to find work.
That's terrible.
It's awful. If you do make it and you do get hired, the economics of the job just do not add up. Because you're not paid by the hour, you're paid by your output. To earn 50 cents, for example, you have to assemble 100 boxes. They're candy boxes. Each box takes 16 very precise folds, which means if you don't make a mistake, then there's 1,600 individual folds just to make $1.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And remember, you're paid on the output, right? So if you fold 48 boxes, not 50, then you don't qualify for their 50 cents.
You have to hit the tiers.
Yes. Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
And again, what rounds these stories out are the first-hand accounts of the people living inside these systems, putting you next to the people being crushed by it. And that's what really ends up making people relate to her writing. Another notable expose she does is a baby trafficking scam, where she poses as a wanting mother looking to buy a baby.
Buying a baby?
Yeah, I think it's like $10 that she can buy the baby for. I don't know if she actually buys the baby, but she certainly gets the opportunity to buy the baby.
To prove that it's possible.
Yeah. She also exposes a dating agency where people pay to scan through single profiles only for them to be connected to other con artists ready to scam you, or even worse.
Do you know what? She sounds like... Do you know BBC? I'm pretty sure BBC One, they used to have something called Rogue Traders, where they'd go around and like bust like these corrupt businesses.
Yeah, I remember that.
If it was a different time, she would have her own TV show.
Totally. All of her stuff that she's done could definitely be a film. Do you know what I mean? You can build a film around it. By this point in her career, she's a little bit of a celebrity and a massive asset to the New York world. There's tons of rivalry amongst other agencies at this point too. Literally every newspaper in the city has their own female stunt reporter, which collectively become known as like the newsgirls.
Okay.
So if the New York world was going to stay ahead, they were going to need to keep coming up with new and interesting angles to maintain their readership, because they carved themselves out a bit of a niche with Nellie as their famous stunt reporter, but now every motherfucker has one. This is when they get the idea to test the very famous novel by Jules Verne, Phileas Fogg's Around the World in 80 Days.
Oh, so they're going to go around the world in a hot air balloon?
Not in a hot air balloon, unfortunately.
Because they realize that's not possible.
No. So really great angle. Better yet, could someone do it in less than 80 days? And better yet, what if the person doing it was a woman?
Surely not.
Surely not. Scandal.
What happens if they also had a monkey with them?
Adam.
What?
Just wait.
Oh, really?
Yes. How did you know?
I generally just guessed that.
Yeah, you'll see. So, of course, they think Nellie is going to be perfect for this, right? She immediately says yes. But the rules are that she is completely on her own. She cannot have any help in this whatsoever. But she also has to move fast, because the next ship leaving across the Atlantic leaves in just 2 days. So there's almost no time to prepare. So she starts to gather all her supplies. She thinks about what clothes she's going to need. Obviously, she has to travel light, which is of immense fascination to the people reading the story. Like when people travel, especially women, they typically travel with dozens and dozens of suitcases with an outfit for like every stop, right? But she takes just like a handful of things, like 2 suitcases, which in itself becomes an entire dispatch that people are deeply fascinated by.
What's in your suitcase?
Yeah, like how could you travel? Like where's your day gloves? Where's your night gloves? Where's your negotiating gloves? That type of thing, right? Then she starts plotting out her route. The plan is to travel from New York across the Atlantic to Europe, then through the Middle East into Asia, and then make her way to Japan. From there, She'll then cross the Pacific to San Francisco and then do like a victory lap overland again back to New York. No entourage, no chaperone, just on her own wits. That's the one rule that they have to stick to. And again, people are really fascinated because they're like, but how will she do it? She's a woman.
What, so are they going to give her enough money? I'm assuming they'll fund it and she just has to find her way around, buy tickets.
I assume she's got like some sort of an allowance. Mm-hmm. And so on the 14th of November, 1889, she sets off across the Atlantic. Thousands of people come to see her off. The story is framed as this kind of modern adventure of a woman traveling fast, alone, with a clock ticking loudly in the background. It's a film, right? I can imagine this. She arrives in London just 7 days later. She is completely seasick. Like, it's a moment where there's a serious question whether or not she'll even be able to keep going. But she is fine. From there, she gets a train to Paris, where she actually meets Jules Verne himself, like the guy who wrote Phileas Fogg's Around the World in 80 Days. And I don't think he's very impressed because he's like, if you do it in 79 days, I might clap with both hands. It's like, yes, Jules, that's how clapping works.
Yeah, how else are you going to do it? Oh, no, actually, I had a friend that could clap with one hand.
Really?
Yeah, he'd be able to like properly shake his hand. He'd be able to clap with one hand.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
So do you think that's what Jules Verne meant?
I'm guessing so. That's the only logical explanation.
I can't imagine Jules Verne trying to clap with one hand. A very serious author there. So from Paris, she then continues through Europe and then on towards Egypt. Here's the thing, Adam. As soon as Nellie leaves New York City, a rival publication decides they're going to send their own female stunt reporter, a journalist/socialite named Elizabeth Westwood, to race Nellie around the world going in the opposite direction. Yes. And that publication is, of all things, Cosmopolitan magazine.
Really?
Yeah. So before it was like, climax your way to better skin. It was now, climax your way around the world in 80 positions.
I don't think they ever would have said that back then.
But what I'm saying is like, what a turnaround.
Yeah.
Like going from like reporting on this to
other things.
Yeah. Doggy style will never get you that promotion. That sort of thing.
I didn't realize Cosmopolitan's been going that long.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
And so this story has now taken on a whole new dimension and the public are completely gripped. Here's the thing, Adam, Nellie has no idea that this is a head-to-head race.
She just knows that she needs to do it in like 80 days.
Yeah. She doesn't find out until she's halfway through her journey. And it's because she's moving so fast, it's almost impossible to get like a telegram to her. She's literally stopping for a couple of days, filing a dispatch, and then she's gone again. It's not until she reaches Hong Kong, she's arranging her onward journey to Japan, I think, that someone in the office is like, looks like you're going to lose the race, babe. And she's like, what are you talking about? And that's how she finds out that it is a race and that she's in fact behind.
Is she? How far behind?
Only by a couple of days. But even missing a single connection could delay you by like an entire week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not much, but if she misses this next connection, she's fucked. But she is playing it cool, right? She makes out as if it's not about winning, it's about making it in 80 days. But secretly, knowing what we know about Nellie, she's probably furious.
The thing is, though, if it's the other news publication and they print it first, well, by the time that she prints her story, old news.
Yeah, that's true. And like while she waits for her connections onwards to the next stop, she does get a chance to have a look around. And slowly her luggage grows from like 2 suitcases to 3 suitcases. She's collecting a bunch of souvenirs. She's buying clothes. In fact, when she's in Hong Kong, she buys a monkey.
Told ya.
Told ya. She names him McGinty.
McGinty?
McGinty, yeah.
What kind of monkey?
Oh, I don't know. A monkey.
I'm guessing it's one that sits on your shoulder rather than like a gorilla. That just...
Yes. Yes. He actually becomes a star of her dispatches from here on out. He accompanies her for the rest of the journey. In fact, at one point, there's a massive concern from the public because he catches a cold and it's not quite clear if he's going to make it.
Poor McGinty.
I know. Poor McGinty. But he does. And he actually ends up living with her back in New York for like a number of years afterwards.
Well, before they realize, wild animals shouldn't be pets.
Ross is out there in the city raising monkeys. Why can't she?
That's true. That's very true.
But the point is that this little monkey is one of those little details that makes this whole adventure really captivating for the people that are following the story. They get really invested in the character of herself and the characters that she meets, but then also the character of this monkey that she introduces into the story.
I think it'd be incredible to travel the world in 80 days. Things that she's seen and
Oh,
done.
the things she must have seen.
Yeah, how cool is that she's pioneering this kind of adventure?
And remember, as a woman as well, in the 1800s, at a time where it was frowned upon for women to travel unchaperoned, she's doing this all on her own and on her own dime as well.
Yeah.
So finally, on the 21st of January, 1890, she makes it to San Francisco. She is 2 days behind schedule. So people following her, they're all on tenterhooks, wondering whether or not she'll make it. But now that she was in North America, at least she was on the home straight. Mm-hmm. So this becomes sort of a victory lap for her because people line up at stations hoping to grab a glimpse of her and McGinty as they travel through. Meanwhile, Elizabeth, traveling the other way around the world, she reaches the UK and is about to board a ship crossing the Atlantic. It looks like Nellie is going to win when suddenly a massive snowstorm hits the Midwest and suddenly it looks like she is not going to make it at all. So to avoid letting Elizabeth win, the New York World decides to intervene. Tut-tut. And they charter a special train to get her across the country. And Cosmopolitan, they are outraged by this. They release a bunch of scathing dispatches saying how they're not following the rules, etc. But people are like, listen, the New York World didn't make this a contest. You did.
Yeah.
And we're the ones who are championing Nellie, not this other bitch just trying to ride her coattails. So they completely forgive them for it.
And she doesn't have a monkey.
Exactly. Where's your monkey? And eventually, on the 25th of January, 1890, Nellie arrives back in New York to a roaring crowd of people. She did it, Adam. Not only did she do it, she made it back in 72 days, 6 hours and 11 minutes.
I would be calling up Jules Verne.
Yeah.
Like,
demanding he can clap for you.
With both hands. Both hands, Jules.
Yeah. So she's beating Phileas Fogg's record. Elizabeth doesn't make it back for another 4 days. But also there's no one there to see her back.
Oh, yeah, you did it, but someone else did it before you.
Yeah, no one cares. And actually, she's so embarrassed that she tries to actively distance herself from the story for the rest of her career.
To be fair, that's a shame because what she did is, we shouldn't be like tearing one person down because what she did was actually pretty impressive.
It is, but it's also, there's an underhandedness there with Cosmopolitan magazine trying to capitalize on something of another woman's success. Like, she's taken this challenge and they're trying to quash it. I don't know. There's just something distasteful about it for me.
Yeah, I agree with the publication, but actually the fact that she still managed to do it by herself, that should still be praised.
Listen, Elizabeth is fine. She's a socialite. She's very rich, right? She didn't want to do the round the world because she had dinner plans the night that they wanted her to leave.
Really?
Yes.
You're just making that up.
No, I swear to God. But she agreed in the end.
Okay.
So do I care? No. Nellie's the one who was like, I'm going to do this.
I agree. Let's celebrate Nellie, but I'm just saying, hey, Elizabeth, well done to you.
But at the end of the day, this is another massive success for Nellie. Before she was a celebrated journalist, but now she's like an outright celebrity. Do you know what I mean? And I can't understate how invested people became in her success. So much so, like they run a sweepstake where people guess how long it's going to take for her to complete the trip around the world down to the second. It grows out of control, Adam. They receive like 100,000 entries. And I think the prize is like an all expenses paid trip to Europe. They also sell a ton of merchandise, including signed photos, souvenirs. They even make a board game about her around the world trip.
That's cool.
It is really cool. It looks like Trivial Pursuit, basically. And it's all driven by her personality, her pluck, and her bravery. So it's easy to see why this hits the chord it does, because at this point, the suffragette movement is now starting to really pick up steam. So there's a genuine appetite for women doing extraordinary things in a world where the notion is constantly challenged by what society deems as proper behavior for women. Mm-hmm. And there's just Nellie just unapologetically doing the impossible. Which is not really impossible, but it's the impossible set by the standards. Do you know what I mean?
And making it possible.
Making it possible for other women. Mm. So the round the world in 72 days is sort of a dopamine overdose for her, because where do you exactly go after this, right? Now, what's the next big thing you do?
Yeah, it's too early for space.
Of course, you want to keep doing bigger and bigger things, but the New York World, they want to keep her on a bit of a short leash. And so she starts to feel like she's not being given the recognition for everything that she's achieved. And so she leaves. She gives up journalism.
And what does she do?
So someone suggests, might you try writing a novel? Which I get it. Everything that she's done would be a brilliant novel or a brilliant film.
But she's done the writing. Is she not want to do something different?
She's given a massive cash advance, which is very attractive to her. So she decides to give this a go, right? It's a couple of novels. But Adam, while she excels at everything she turns her hand to, it is very clear she's not a very good novelist.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's because writing novels is a very different kettle of fish. Plus, writing novels requires more polish, which isn't really her bag.
She's got this kind of rawness and authenticity, right?
Yeah, it's all about her presence, her ability to open a window into real life, her connection to other people. But don't feel bad for this failure because she does find this boring. She just doesn't have the patience for it. So it's not so much that she failed, it's that she just gave up on it.
Well, it doesn't sound like it was her passion.
No, it wasn't really fulfilling her. Instead, she decides that she is going to head to Chicago. This is where she meets a man named Robert Livingston Seaman.
Seaman?
Yeah, great name. Love it. They meet, and after 2 weeks, they're married. So it's very controversial because at this point, Nellie is 31 and he is 70.
Ooh, okay.
So he's also a very rich man as well. So people question whether or not this is a kind of a gold digger situation, especially his kids are saying that because she is younger than all of them.
Oh, right, okay. I mean, she didn't strike me as... I imagine she's doing okay, so it's not like she has to do this. So,
yeah, she seems too independent and too plucky to be getting involved with a 70-year-old man.
Or at least, yeah, just for money. So she must have really...
Oh, yeah, no, I don't buy the gold digger aspect at all. But I do struggle with why she would marry someone like this when she is so plucky and so independent. And like I said, he's really rich. He's actually an industrialist. He owns a factory that makes things like milk cans, barrels, even kitchen sinks. So it's interesting because Nellie has committed her entire career to writing about the appalling worker conditions, and she has a chance to really bring positive change in the very thing that she has been writing about. In fact, it's almost like a test case. She can now prove that it doesn't need to be this way. She gets Robert to start paying fairer wages. She also implements things like a library and a social club for the workers to use. All of this has this incredible effect because worker morale and productivity as a result really improves. So she's like, take that, man.
So she basically pioneered employee benefits.
Possibly.
In a way.
Perks.
Yeah.
But the marriage is very unhappy. Robert is so paranoid that she is stepping out with other men that he hires people to follow her. But Adam, she really isn't. She's just too busy. Like, she's always out wanting to be in the thick of it, meeting people, doing activism work. Remember, she's doing a lot of stuff around the suffragette movement at this time. She doesn't want to sit at home and have dinner. But as soon as Robert realizes that she isn't cheating on him, that's when pretty much everything changes and they really do fall deeply in love. Sadly, after 9 years of marriage, Robert dies at the age of 79.
I mean, they still had 9 years together.
They did, yes, and they were very happy. So I'm really glad that she had that at least. And I think I read he was like hit by a wagon or something and he doesn't end up recovering.
Oh.
But she is really devastated, so I feel for her.
And it kind of shows, yeah, that probably it was love, right?
Well, that she's devastated or that he was hit by a wagon. I'm so in love I got hit by a wagon.
No, and the fact that whilst it was a very short romance to get married,
yeah,
it actually lasted the distance.
After his death, she manages to outmaneuver the entire family. She inherits literally most of the estate. And so she is like, sure, I can run a factory. She transforms the company entirely. She rejuvenates the entire revenue stack. She secures a bunch of new clients. She even patents a bunch of new barrel making techniques, which I think is really impressive in herself. You can go on Wikipedia and you can see all the different patents that she's filed. I don't know what any of them mean or what they do.
But she did it.
But she did it. Yeah, exactly. But what she's doing here is the very thing that she's been trying to prove all along, that you can have a fair workplace and still have a profitable business. Because at the time, a lot of the pushback was like, yeah, sure, we can treat our workers fairer, but we will lose money as a result. And what she's proved is the exact opposite.
And probably profits then, I'm assuming.
Exactly. So she does that for a while. Everything's going really brilliantly. But then money starts going missing from the company. And as a result, she has to sell big chunks of the estate just to keep the factory afloat. And it turns out that when she brings the auditors in, that one of her most trusted executives, a man, had been embezzling money from the business, the equivalent of £10 million.
Wow.
And by the time the scale of this corruption has finally been uncovered, the damage is already done and there's just no way for them to recover and the factory goes out of business.
What?
Yeah, isn't that awful?
The fact that what she did and then it's just someone that screwed it up.
Yeah. And as you can obviously imagine, there are some people that swing this to call this her failure, but really it wasn't. She done incredible things for this factory. She proved the things that she dedicated her entire life towards. And yeah, sadly, one man brought the entire thing down.
Was he arrested?
Probably not.
Screw him.
He's a rich white man. Probably not. But what I did find really interesting is that a lot of her success in business actually comes from her leaning into her personal brand. Like, she's so recognizable as a public figure that she starts putting her face on a lot of the company's products, which really creates this massive uptick in revenue. So she's sort of the early form of celebrity endorsement, which I found that really fascinating.
Well, yeah, I guess she's pretty renowned, right?
Renowned?
Renowned. Yeah.
After the collapse of the factory, she's now in her mid-40s, and she decides she's going to go back to journalism because that's what she's really good at, right?
She has done so much in her...
I know! That's what I said at the beginning of the show!
Jeez, I was thinking, oh, she must be like 60 now.
Nope. She's 40. But there is a problem. Times have changed, Adam. Part of her appeal early in her career was the fact that she was young and spunky, right? But now she's hitting 40. And like, she was still celebrated for everything that she had done, but she didn't fit that niche anymore, that niche of kind of the news girls in a way. And so when she realizes that, it's a little bit of a blow for her. But remember, she still has a credibility. She still has a reputation that she'd built in her youth. So she just now has to work out how she can repackage that into something different that is not quite news girls, but is still appealing, but also can build out a niche that no one else is doing because it's so saturated anyway. Why do you want to be a young news girl? You don't.
She could be the original Oprah.
I said Moira Stewart, but I figured our American listeners wouldn't know what we meant by that. But yeah, she's the original Oprah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get a wagon, you get a wagon.
Yeah. So what did she do?
Okay, so she drops the whole kind of pluck and the precocious kind of aspects of what made her appealing to begin with. She's obviously now less driven by youthful curiosity and she becomes more serious, leaning more into her credibility. And, like I said, as you said, she becomes the first Oprah. Around about this time, the First World War breaks out. And like an absolute beast, she decides that she's going to go off and report from the Eastern Front.
Wow.
Which, as we know, she is great at creating this visual window. So her reporting really stands out amongst many of the other reporters that are out there on the scene. She also becomes one of the first journalists to visit the war zone between Serbia and Austria, which is essentially ground zero for World War I, where all the action is happening. At one point, she gets so deep into it that she's arrested and accused of being a spy, Adam.
Really?
Like, if she was great at writing novels, this is one of those great stories that she'd be able to tell.
Yeah.
She also heavily covers the Women's Suffrage Parade of 1913, where she writes this super bold piece titled Suffragists Are Men's Superiors. And in it, Adam, she predicts it will be 1920 before women in the United States gets the right to vote. And that's exactly what happens.
What, she actually predicted the year.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? But sadly, Adam, the great Nellie Bly, she dies just 2 years later in 1922. She apparently contracts pneumonia and she dies. She is 57 years old.
57, so still pretty young in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, so she doesn't get a very long life, but damn,
what a
she
life.
lived one filled with enough adventure for multiple lifetimes.
Yeah.
Of course, she does leave behind this incredible legacy. People obviously have written children's books about her, framing her as this pioneer who forced her way into a man's world and refused to kind of accept the limits that were placed on her. She obviously showed that women can play at a man's game, and 90% of the time when they do, they surpass men entirely. But when you boil it down, like we've covered so much, and that's only, like I said, the tip of the iceberg of the other things she's done. But when you boil it down, it's just ridiculous. She is a woman from a small hamlet in rural Pennsylvania. She breaks into journalism. She gets herself committed into a madhouse. She exposes the injustices and exploitation of women all over. She circumnavigates the world. She becomes an industrialist. She reports on one of the worst wars in human history at the front line. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the things that she's done. Damn, Adam.
All because she didn't want to write about gardening.
Yes. And what have you done today, Adam?
Yeah, it's quite crazy how her life just, that's the path it set her on. It just led to one great thing after another.
And Adam, that is the story of Nellie Bly.
She, impressive woman, never heard about her, but clearly she probably has done so much for people that they don't realize.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. And that's the interesting thing about her story is a lot of the podcasts and a lot of the articles that I've read out there, they typically focus on one aspect of a story. So, for example, they might just focus just on the 10 days in the madhouse, right? But I think it does her story such a disservice without mentioning the other things that she's done.
That was just a starting point.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, the 10 days in the madhouse obviously is the thing that kind of propels her career. But I honestly think you have to frame it amongst the other things that she's done.
Yeah, the fact that she was a businesswoman, she knew how to run a business, she traveled the world.
She was an activist,
she had
adventurer,
a monkey.
she had a monkey. Yeah.
I don't know any other woman that had a monkey.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah. Do you think she ever spanked it?
Why do you have to go there?
I'm just asking. I never really understood that term either, because it's not really a spanking action.
What?
Spanking the monkey.
Oh, no.
Right, Adam. Should we do some member shout-outs?
Sure.
As you guys all know by now, HR have been hard at work assigning some real job roles to all of our certified freaks and our big top tier members.
The only problem is, while we know your job title, we don't actually know what your job entails.
So, when you hear your name, take note of your job title and use the link in the show notes to submit your job description to HR.
They want to know what your duties involve, who you report to, and any major incidents that have happened under your watch.
Also, tell us about your KPIs and how you're tracking against those. And of course, we'll be sure to read some of the best descriptions in a future episode.
Okay, so this week, a very big welcome to Mel, our sideshow Unexpected Bang Incident Recorder.
Bang Incident Recorder? What does that mean?
Every time someone bangs their knee, they write it down.
So you meant like a gun going off or something. That's good.
That's what I interpreted.
We have Iona, our Deputy Registrar of Unsanctioned Carousel Winnie Allocations.
Isla, our Snack Token Numerical Miscount Auditor.
Oh, important role. We have Lucy Morville, our Instant Recorder of Unauthorized Curtain Flourishes.
And then Christina, our Assistant Archivist of Unexplained Spotlight Flickers.
What was that? It was a moth. We have Susan Ainsley, our Executive Authority on Catastrophic Tent Opening Ceremonies.
Sometimes the show doesn't even go on.
It doesn't.
It just ends there.
You're sorry, we can't open the circus. So guys, if you are a certified freak or a big top tier member and you didn't hear your job title, don't worry, your role does exist somewhere in Sue's filing cabinet and we'll read more of them in a future episode. But if you want yours now, all you got to do is just send us a message on Patreon or Instagram. We'll dig yours out so you can get cracking on your job descriptions.
Okay, so shall we run the outro this week?
I think I'm ready to run the outro. No more gags, no more banter. No more insults?
No, I'm out.
You're out of it. Okay. Well, guys, that brings us to the end of another fascinating foray into the compendium, an assembly of fascinating things.
And if today's episode has sparked your curiosity, then please do us a favor and follow us on your favorite podcast app. It truly makes a world of difference and helps more people like you discover the show.
And for our dedicated freaks out there, don't forget that next week's episode is already waiting for you on our Patreon. And as always, it is completely free to access.
And of course, if you want even more, then join our Certified Freaks tier to unlock the entire archive. You get to delve into exclusive content and get a sneak peek at what's coming next.
We drop new episodes every Tuesday, and until then, remember, sometimes the bravest adventure is walking into the dark on purpose, just to bring a match back out. We'll see you next time.
See ya.